What's up, co-counsels? I don't want to keep you guys waiting, so I'm gonna wait. What's going on? I'm getting distracted. Don't get distracted. Don't get distracted. Uh, trying to find the Kohberger proceedings. I think that was I'm in the wrong spot. That was sometime cannot be last week. I think it was the week before. Hold on, let us find Kohberger. I cannot find it. Why did I do that? Hold on. I'm trying to find it. When did we talk about the mysterious witness? Was that last week? Was it the week before? I don't quite remember. I don't want to put Vinny on. I just want to watch the video for myself. I guess that's what I should have been searching for. Anyways, let me share my screen. Okay. Let's share the screen. There we go. I'm exhausted. Hopefully you guys have had a good week so far. I cannot wait for the weekend. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I'm glad tomorrow's Friday. I get to do my laundry. No, man, this is not what I want. This is not what I want. I just cannot find it. I wish I had written the date down. That's what I should have done. Let's go to Court TV. Let's see if we can find it.
Little bit of a
Let's
brutal murders.
Let's see if we can find. It would have been a live stream. Oh, this preppy. I don't know if this is Allie that's in here or not, but I watched a bit of Judge McBurney today. I have questions. Okay, I have questions. They kept talking about TikTok or something. They kept talking about something. I have questions about today's trial in Judge McBurney's courtroom. Dang, am I missing Kohberger altogether? I guess we're gonna have to go with Vinny, but that's not. No, I don't want any of these people. Girl, you cannot be picky if you don't have a camera in the courtroom. Like, that's not what I want. Let me search for it on my phone. I'm gonna play this while I search. Let us get into it.
I'm Vinny Politan. The subject of my investigation is the next huge trial here on Court TV. The murders of 4 University of Idaho students.
Yeah, this case is for sure. This is the one case that I've been looking forward to all year long. The one case I've been looking forward to.
A case that started with a manhunt and is now a death penalty trial. Here's the story. In the dead of night on November 13th, 2022, a brutal horror unfolded in a quiet college town. 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were savagely stabbed to death in their off-campus home, their lives stolen in the stillness of early morning. The scene was a nightmare. Untouched valuables, no signs of forced entry, and 2 surviving roommates asleep just rooms away. Panic rippled across Moscow, Idaho, as fear took hold and answers remained elusive. For weeks, grief-stricken families and a shaken campus waited, desperate for justice. Then, a stunning arrest. A criminology PhD student studying just miles away was taken into custody. DNA from a knife sheath, cell phone data, and eerie surveillance footage allegedly tied him to the scene. The community, once wrapped in innocence, now watches as the trial approaches, a chilling confrontation between law and depravity. The victims' names are etched in memory, their voices silenced, but their story far from over.
Oh, wow. So this is from an hour ago. There's questions about whether the trial would be whether the trial would be pushed back or adjourned. Nope, this is from an hour ago. KTVB, I don't know, that might be an Idaho network. They pretty much said that the trial, it's going to begin in August. All right, there's no question about it. August. So August 18th, set for jury. What's it? Oh, why did I click on that? Here. Okay. So jury selection starts August 4th. And then prior to that, there'll be sealed proceedings that are set to begin July 28th. Opening statement scheduled for August 18th. Okay. That's the schedule. So this trial, it sounds like it's going to go absent anything out of the ordinary happening.
As we get ready for this trial later this summer, this is going to be a difficult one on many different levels, but it really begins with the loss. 4 young people gone. 4
Listen, I want to listen to the actual proceedings, not to what's up, Callie girl? What's up, Allie? I don't want to be this person. I don't want to focus as much on the victims. My focus is on the criminal defendant. So that's why I prefer to watch the actual court proceedings. I don't want to listen to somebody else's account. But I'm also, oh, is this it? I think I found it. I think I found it. Hold on. I think I found it. Allie, I have a question. Did you watch today's trial, Judge McBurney? I think I found it. Did I find it? No. No, that's not it. That's somebody else's coverage. What's up, Callie girl? I think I already said that. I don't know. I'll reply to you. I'll reply to you. But Allie, let me know. Okay. Okay, so Allie did. What is the TikTok they kept talking about? Is it the app or is it a place in Georgia? I'm referring to the defendant. I believe the defendant took the stand. I could not quite. I caught the tail end of that though, because I only caught the Abate's cross examination, and the cross examination was focused on him not telling law enforcement that he felt threatened. The victim in that case apparently had no weapon or gun or anything along those lines. What was the TikTok? Oh, the app. What? Okay, I think I don't know. Maybe I just have to go rewatch. Not, I cannot say rewatch because I really did not watch it. I was in and out. Um, okay, tell me what about the app? What about the app deals with the defendant in that case? Because I did not quite get that.
Innocent, good people murdered, and it was a brutal crime scene. And there's surviving roommates who are going to testify. This is going to be so heartbreaking on so many different levels.
Yes.
There's another part of this case, though, that is going to happen because of the rules in Idaho. We know very.
Listen, this Bryan Kohberger case, difficult case for the defense, incredibly difficult. If we recap what we've watched so far, I think, I don't know what we watched in January, but in February, or was that January? I don't remember. The ASAP Rocky trial, no question that was a difficult case for the prosecution. Okay. I mean, it's not the toughest case ever. It definitely did not help that Raleigh did not, Raleigh was not prepped. It also did not help that Raleigh collected the shell casings. That was poor advice, though, because apparently he had called some personal injury attorney, and the attorney told him to go on the stand and collect shell casings. Poor advice. He should have never done that. After ASAP Rocky, I know that puts us sometime in February, because I could not. In February, we watched Colin Griffiths. Colin Griffiths, that was actually a strong prosecution case, but shout out to all public defenders. The public defenders, or the attorney, the public defenders in that case did a phenomenal job of turning the case upside its head, and they focused on the victim in that case. So the defense cannot do that in this case. In the Kohberger case, The defense cannot focus on the victims because they're going to appear to be monsters. If they do that, it's not going to pan out too good for Michael Kohberger. My understanding is that Kohberger is raising a party culprit defense, or what they're calling, I think they're calling it an alternate. I don't remember the exact wording in Idaho, but it is a third party culprit defense. That's what they're raising. So they're not focusing on the victims in this case. They're going to focus on, I don't know, some phantom somewhere. Um, and then from, let's see, after the Colin Griffith, that Colin Griffith is actually my favorite case of the year. It sounds weird. It sounds really weird, but to me, that was a great illustration of this distinction between um, factual truth and substantive truth. Okay. And then what did we watch after Colin Griffith? It's a bit of a blur. I think we just moved on to Lori. My goodness, there was Lori Daybell. Lori, I don't know what to say about Lori. I was Lori's standby counsel, so I guess I really cannot talk about my phantom client or pretend client on here. So I'm going to leave Lori alone because she was not represented. And then we moved on to I don't want to say that name again. We're just going to skip her because I'm really tired of that case. All right. So now we're into the Bryan Kohberger case. I think for sure in this case, we are possibly going to see some pretty excellent, we're going to see some excellent defense work. That's what I'm hoping for. But this Bryan Kohberger case, I don't know. This is one of those cases where if you are charged, 99% likelihood that you're actually getting convicted, whether you've done it or not. And the reason for that is because it was a mass killing or mass murder, and you have young individuals, you have young adults or teenagers, so late teens, they're college students. uh, yeah, the facts are a little stacked against Bryan Kohberger at this stage. The one redeeming quality about him is maybe the fact that he is college educated. Usually that goes well with jurists to have somebody that's college educated, but the problem is he was a criminology PhD candidate. So he was a criminologist in the making. So that could potentially, because initially, if I go back to 2023, the way that it was being reported, they were trying to make it seem as if Bryan Kohberger played out what was being taught to him. So I don't know. That's it could go either way on that one. So maybe that does not work out too well for him. But this is a very, very complex case. It's a complex case. So Ellie says he took the stand. I don't know why he went on the stand, but I understand why he took the stand because they're saying self defense. Uh, yeah, if they're claiming self defense, you have to take the stand. You definitely, or not necessarily. They could have put somebody else on there. I don't know who they could have put on the stand. Uh, I don't know. That's a tough one. Yeah. N- with self defense, you have to put somebody on the stand. I know the girlfriend or ex girlfriend testified for the prosecution. That's a tough one. Anyways, Ali says that I want to go back and watch the day again because I was just listening while I was working and I want to watch again and pay attention. All right, that's fair, but please find out what the TikTok stuff was about because I did not get that. Let us get into Vinny though. This is going to be a tough case. And then again, I do want to focus a little bit on I want to focus a little bit on Bryan Kohberger's attorneys, okay? We're going to go all the way back to December. That's not going to be in this live stream. That will be on Monday. Monday, we're going to go back to December because there are some pretty, I want to say good moments. Okay. This is a difficult case. But if we go back to December, I followed the proceedings there, and there are a lot of teachable moments from those proceedings. Let me put it that way. Let's get in.
Very little about what happened that night. As we get closer to trial, we're getting more and more pieces. But once that trial begins, every day of testimony, we're going to learn something new about the investigation, something new about the crime, and something new about the evidence. So let's start tonight and go back to the crime itself. What happened to these four young...
Bryan Kohberger, they have an uphill battle. And no, I'm not going to talk about that case. Let's move on.
Young people. Take a listen.
All right, so this is from Fox 13. They're saying that Bryan Kohberger trial is delayed only by a week, okay? It's delayed by a week. They're saying what? Hold on, Daily Mail is saying something. Bryan Kohberger's defense dealt major blow as judge blasts his wild claim. 4 other suspects could have committed the Idaho murders. Listen, you have to put something on. You have to put something on. There's no question about it. You have to, under these circumstances, they have to put on an actual defense. Put something on.
On the morning of November 13th at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed to the Whitcomb Dispatch Center reporting an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence and was made from the phone of one of the surviving roommates. Moscow Police Department officers responded and located 4 victims, 2 on the 2nd floor and 2 on the 3rd floor. The Latah County coroners conducted autopsies, and detectives have been provided with the results of those autopsies.
Now I'm interested in, we might switch it up a little bit. Let me make a note for myself. I'm going to make a note for myself. For Bryan Kohberger, instead of going to December of 2023, we are going to focus on the 4 third-party culprits, okay? That's who we're going. The reason why I was thinking about that is because this is going to sound awful. I'm actually not going to say it. As far as who they could potentially blame it on, I'm not going to say it. Callie, I might send you a voice note. I'm not going to say it on the live stream. Callie says there was a case in the UK about a criminologist who also unalived 2 women. Send me. We might get into some UK stuff. Send me a WhatsApp. Ali says, I want a real lawyer. Did you get the Dirk and Melly records? I'm gonna take a look at that after the live. I have too many tabs open. I'm not able to open any more tabs. My computer won't allow me to do that. So, and yeah, because this tab, it's one of my many open tabs. I even forgot what was on this tab before this Bryan Kohberger, but I'll take a look at that. Thank you, Ali.
Autopsies. We know that the autopsies confirmed the identity of the 4 victims, determined the cause and manner of death as a homicide by stabbing, and determined that it was likely all 4 victims who were asleep during the attack. Some of the victims had defensive wounds, and each victim was stabbed multiple times.
Officers discovered the bodies of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Goncalves inside the residence on King Road. The 4 were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time.
Chief, have you identified a motive?
That is part of the investigation, and that will come out as we continue the investigation. But what we still ask is for people to continually send us things in the tip line. We are still looking for more information. We're still trying to build that picture, just like we have stated all along. We're putting all the pieces together, and that will help.
This investigation is not cold. We get tips every day that are viable. Every single day, we get a good amount of viable tips. And those tips help us do everything from clear people who maybe there was some speculation about, to further some of the theories that we're working on. Eventually.
All right, so just some of the basics, okay? Bryan Kohberger, he's charged with, he's facing 5 different charges, okay? 4 counts of first-degree murder for each victim, and then a count of felony burglary, all right?
We're going to narrow in on exactly what happened and who did it.
Now they believe they know who did it. They've charged him with the 4 murders in this case. Now, they also believe this is what the weapon is that I'm holding in my hand. This is the same exact weapon that's been described. And the reason they believe they know what it is that the sheath that is holding this knife, this K-bar knife, was found at the scene. And that is the crucial piece of evidence, the DNA that they say they found on the snap here. But as I hold this, I don't even want to unbutton this and look at the knife. I can feel how heavy it is. But just to know that someone used something just like this to take those 4 lives in such a brutal, brutal way with a weapon like this.
So here's one, I don't remember this though, September of 24, what was I doing? I don't remember. But apparently on September 9 of 2024, the judge granted the defense motion for a change of venue. So that's, I guess, a plus. The trial is scheduled to take place in Boise, Idaho, with a judge presiding over the case. And from a defense perspective, it makes sense, okay? It makes sense to move away from, because there's no question that this was a highly publicized case. I'm talking about, not that the case has proceeded, but I'm talking about the killings of these college students. When something like that happens in a town, most people are going to find out about it, right? And most people would have formed opinions. Even if they say they can set those opinions aside, there's a question about whether Bryan Kohberger could in fact have had, or whether he could get a fair trial in, in the city or the town where I think it was Moscow, where these killings allegedly took place. Okay, so they changed venue. Hopefully, I don't know though, because I'm on the East Coast, and I remember very clearly late 2023, I woke up, this was on the news, and I followed the case ever since. So I do not exactly know how they get folks in Boise that have not heard about this case, that have not formed opinions about this case, but I suppose we'll see.
And that brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. And it's about the knife. Where's the murder weapon? They don't have the murder weapon. The defense is going to make that a big part of their case.
Right.
Where could it be? Here to help answer this question, former homicide detective Chris McDonough. He's also the host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough, and retired FBI agent Stuart Fillmore. You can find him on all platforms as Texas Crime Travelers. Thank you both for being here. This is not an easy question, right? Chris, what are your thoughts about where this weapon could be?
Okay, where's the weapon?
Well, Vinny, I think the first thing that we need to consider is, how important that weapon was to the offender. And that will help us determine whether or not the offender would have discarded it after the crime. And in this particular case, we have evidence, obviously, that he had gone back into Amazon and actually put a duplicate knife into, the cart.
All right,
but he didn't make the purchase. So that may give us a little insight into what he was thinking post-homicide. So he could have tossed it out, kind of like...
I'm sorry, Ali. I know you followed me on TikTok or whatever. I'm yet to post. I'll eventually get to it. I keep forgetting about this social media stuff you people.
Bundy did back in the day, because we have evidence that he was cosplaying Bundy with photographs, obviously, on his phone. But it's probably alongside of a rotor in the Snake River.
The Snake River, that's a that would be a tough one to recover from. Stuart Fillmore, what are your thoughts about, it seemed that if you believe the prosecution's version and you believe this is the suspect, there was some level of planning in all of this. And I guess part of the plan has to be, what do you do with the clothing? What do you do with some of the evidence afterwards?
Okay, so
but
the trial is
specifically,
expected to
the
last
alleged
3
murder weapon
months.
and all of this. What are your thoughts? And how much time would you invest in a case like this in trying to find it?
I mean, at this point in the case, it's really all you're lacking. Well, you don't have motive, but you don't have to have motive. The murder weapon, you have the sheath and then he's the Amazon attempted purchase. I mean, that's pretty compelling stuff there. But man, this would absolutely put this over the top if you could recover this weapon.
When we talk about that area of the country, Chris, it's very rural. Parts of it are. We've had Cody Thomas drive those roads. We're going to talk to him a little bit later in the program about that. But it just seems like there's a lot of places that it could disappear. But it also seems that.
Let's quickly pause. So let's talk a little bit about Bryan, okay? So Bryan was born in 1994. I cannot believe that somebody that's born in 94, they're what? How old are they? Because this article says 28, but I also don't know when this article was published. So let's see. That's crazy to me. Somebody born in 94 is 31 years old. That's really wild. That's really wild to me. I remember once, this is random, but once I represented, was that the youngest person I ever represented? Probably not. I don't know. It was somebody that was born like in 2000 and something. And I was like, wait, what? How old are you? I know. This person probably thought, I have a public defender. She's a little weird. But yeah, I don't know. Time just flies. Time flies. Let's keep going. Okay.
Everyone out there.
Oh, I forgot I was reading this. So apparently he finished an associate degree in psychology. Okay. And not, I guess if you do have an interest in psychology, I'll understand why you'd have a further interest in criminology. In any event, he has an associate degree in psychology at Northampton Community College. Then he went on to complete a bachelor's degree at DeSales University. That was what, 2020? So 2018, how old was he in 2018? I don't know. So 2018, he gets his associate, and then 2020, he gets his bachelor's, and then he did further graduate studies at the university, completing those in 2022. Apparently, some representative confirmed. We don't know what graduate studies, but he did some studies. Okay, at the time of his arrest, Kohberger was a PhD criminology student and teaching assistant at Washington State University's Pullman campus. Okay, which is only about 15 minutes, a 15-minute drive from Moscow. Okay. Kohberger had just finished his first semester, I suppose, at the time of his arrest. In a separate statement, we don't really care about what the university has to say, okay? I guess I'll read it, but apparently the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology said that it was relieved that justice will be carried out. I don't know what that means. I'll leave it alone, okay? I don't know. Let me leave it alone. Let's move on. So the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at the university is aggrieved by the alleged horrendous act of one of its graduate students. Okay, so I suppose they're trying to distance themselves from Kohberger so more people can enroll in the program, because some people might be saying, oh, look, they're turning people into criminals. Okay. Let us move on. I'm out of control. I'm really out of control. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop. Okay. Apparently they were relieved that justice will be carried out. Their hearts are with the victims' families. All right. They're not trying to be sued. So the Moscow police chief, James Fry, confirmed in a news conference that Kohberger lived in Washington State. Okay. And the college said that The university police assisted Idaho law enforcement officials in executing a search warrant at Kohberger's on-campus apartment and office. All right. One of Kohberger's neighbors said the suspect spoke to him about the killings days after they occurred. I don't remember this. Yeah, I don't remember this aspect, unless this means that, unless it's like an informal discussion about, hey, have you heard about this case? I don't know. Let's move on. All right. So the neighbor apparently says he brought it up in conversation. That's why I don't talk to my damn neighbors. The neighbor who asked not to be identified, he asked if I had heard about the murder. Okay, so that's what I figured. Okay. He asked if I had heard about the murders, which I did. And then he said, yeah, it seems like they have no leads. Seems like it was a crime of passion. Okay. All right. At the time of our conversation, it was only a few days after it happened. So there wasn't much details out, the neighbor said. A fellow graduate student in the criminology and criminal justice department told the AP that the news of Kohberger's arrest was pretty out of left field, okay? Ben Roberts said he took several courses. He has no problem with being named. He took several courses with Kohberger after the two started the program together in August. Kohberger was always looking for a way to fit in. I don't know what that means, but maybe they will elaborate. Robert said Kohberger would find the most complicated way to explain something. How's that trying to fit in? Robert said Kohberger would find the most complicated way to explain something. Okay. Okay. So Roberts apparently added he had to make sure you knew that he knew it. It sounds like Kohberger was just giving more details and Robert wanted to hear or knew. I don't know. So Labar described Kohberger as very calm. He's very intelligent and he was fairly shocked by the arrest. His parents were just really shocked, Labar said. And they said, I skipped, so we don't actually know who Labar is, but it's somebody. His parents were just really shocked, Labar said. And they said this is out of character for their son. I guess Labar might actually be no Fry. That's the police. I skipped at the very top of this article. They talked about an attorney that represented him in not in Idaho, in Pennsylvania, because that's where he was arrested and he had to be extradited to Idaho. Okay. So, in a statement, Labar shared January 1st on behalf of Kohberger's parents and two sisters. The family said they were praying for the families of the victims and said they have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in the investigation. This is a little different. What I mean by different is, okay, so I have WhatsApp, Benji. Okay, so Callie said 94, he's 31. Isn't that crazy that somebody born in 94 is actually 31 years old? Callie said, ain't no way he is 30. I had to use a calculator because my numbers are off. COVID screwed my brain. Like I'm just, I used to be really good. Anyways, what's up, Benji? How's work? We're talking about Bryan Kohberger. I was trying to find the actual court proceedings of, the previous pre-trial hearing they had. I could not find it. Vinny, they're talking about the sheath, the knife, and the like. We're just getting into some background information on Bryan Kohberger, okay? We're starting from the very beginning. We have what? Well, this is kind of the end of June. We have about July to really catch up and bring everybody up to speed. I'm really excited about this case, though. So unlike the KR case, that case wore me out. Bryan Kohberger is probably going to wear me out, too, because this case is scheduled for, 3 months? So there's going to be a point when I'm going to be tired and I'm going to want to move on. But in any event, we're just digging into I suppose his past. We're just taking a closer look at some of his I guess it's more so his family. In any event, the part about the family uh saying that they're praying for the victims in this case, uh, the reason why I'm saying it's not completely out of the ordinary, but I always want to understand why um people say certain things or why they do certain things. And apparently, Bryan Kohberger had a similar interest because that's why he was studying criminology. Okay. Um, yeah, but I do wonder. Obviously, I'm trying to figure out these folks have jobs, they have some type of reputation in their community. They probably want to continue to be accepted in their community, which is a bit different because they live in Pennsylvania. So probably in Pennsylvania, it they would not be widely associated with Bryan Kohberger. They can probably distance themselves from their son. Whereas if they lived in Idaho, especially if they had actually lived in Moscow, they'd have real problems. Okay. So I suppose I'm just trying to figure out why they gave that statement because often, the families stand, some families, not everybody, but some families stand with the defendant. Okay. And obviously, as the trial goes on, it's going to be important for the defense to ensure that Bryan has some sort of support in the courtroom. Okay. A bit, I don't know, his parents, his siblings, I don't know, grandmother, grandfather. And that does it plays into the jurors to some extent. Okay. Again, if we go back to that Florida case, I'll be talking about Colin Griffith for a while because that is for sure the best trial of 2025 for me. Okay. If we go back to not Bryan Kohberger, to Colin Griffith, for Colin Griffith, it definitely made a difference that it is his grandmother that was vouching for him, and it also happens to be the decedent's mother, right? So it does help to have some sort of support in the courtroom as far as a criminal defendant is concerned. All right. Okay, let's move on. I was going to talk about sentencing, but you guys know I have a lot of war stories, so we're not going to get into that. Okay, so they go on. First and foremost, we care deeply for the four families who have lost their precious children. There are no words that can. I'm getting distracted. I'm getting distracted. Okay. There are no words that can adequately express the sadness we feel, and we pray each day for them, Kohberger's family said in the statement. There are no words that can adequately express the sadness we feel, and we pray each day for them. Oh, that's like a repetition. Okay. We will continue to let the legal process unfold, and as a family, we will love and support our son and brother, they added. We have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth and promote his presumption of innocence rather than judge unknown facts and make erroneous assumptions. We respect privacy in this matter as our family and the families suffering loss can move forward through the legal process. Here's the other thing, though. When it came to mind, I should have just said it because now I completely lost my train of thought. All right, let us move on. In an interview with NBC's Today Show, Labar said Kohberger's family is obviously shocked by the charges brought against him and don't want to try this case in the court of public opinion because key details about the police investigation have not been released yet. I don't know how I feel about that, but let's think about that for a second. All right. As far as trying a case before the public, all right. I think that plays out better for the defense sometimes. There's no question that this case has already been tried in the court of public opinion from the perspective of the prosecution. I'm not in any way saying that the prosecution has gone on a press run, but this case has garnered a lot of public attention, right? To a point where most people are advocating for the um, for the victims in this case. I'm not saying that it's wrong or it's right, but there's been a lot of pretrial publicity, and pretrial publicity definitely has an impact on the type of jury pool you end up with. Sure enough, the defense the judge granted defense motion for a change of venue, but this case has garnered a lot of attention. I don't even know that with a change of venue that the potential jurors can even distance themselves from the pretrial publicity. So I only bring this up to say that fair enough that that his family are leaving the process to the courts, but maybe his attorneys should have gone on a press run to the same extent that I don't want to say the prosecution, because this is not really the work of the prosecutions. It's more the works of what is this, LawTube or whatever it's called. Because if we go back, let's just quickly go back to the very beginning of this video, right? I mean, this is Vinny. He's just on court TV. But when it comes to opening statements and even during voir dire, this is pretty much the narrative that the prosecution is going to set forth. And this is what they're going to want to stick in the jurors' minds. I'm just going to play a snippet, and then we shall.
And is now a death penalty trial. Here's the Steve Politan. The subject of my investigation is the next huge trial here on Court TV, the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. A case that started with a manhunt and is now a death penalty trial. Here's the story. In the dead of night on November 13th, 2022, a brutal horror unfolded in a quiet college town. 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were savagely stabbed to death in their off-campus home. Their lives.
Their description alone, it's going to be a reoccurring theme in this trial.
Stolen in the stillness of early morning. The scene was a nightmare. Untouched valuables, no signs of forced entry, and 2 surviving roommates asleep just rooms away. Panic rippled across Moscow, Idaho, as fear took hold and answers remained elusive. For weeks, grief-stricken families and a shaken campus waited, desperate for justice. Then, a stunning arrest. A criminology PhD student studying just miles away was taken into custody.
All right, we're going to stop right there. That's enough sensation for now. Benji said work has been good. I'm saving up because my girlfriend wants to go on vacation. All right, Benji, where you trying to go? Where you trying to go? I was considering, I'm not doing anything crazy during my daughter's break. I need to stop spending money, frankly. So yeah, where are you going though? I'm not going. I consider going somewhere in August, and I'm like, girl, don't do it. Don't do it, because I only have like 4 vacation days. So yeah, that's about it.
DNA from a knife sheath, cell phone data, and eerie surveillance footage allegedly.
I also don't want to get on a plane in 2025, so I'm not going anywhere. Really, I'm going to Kids Bob. I'm going to Kids Bob in a few weeks.
Tied him to the scene.
Oh, shoot, I'm getting distracted. Let us get back. All right. All right. So let's see. Okay, investigation. We're not really interested in that. Or maybe let's go over it. Okay, let's go over the investigation. All right. Okay, so This is around the time when Kohberger was in jail. I mean, he's still in jail. It's closer to his arrest, though. So Kohberger at the time was in jail in Idaho, where he was being held without bail after his extradition from Pennsylvania. While the probable cause affidavit and other documents have shed some light on the investigation and how Kohberger was arrested, investigators have said they will not share much information publicly to avoid problems at trial. Okay. The unsealed affidavit showed what investigators believe. I'm actually going to open a new tab. That's why I always have 1,000 tabs. But the unsealed affidavit showed what investigators believe Kohberger did on the night of the brutal murders. One of the surviving residents said she saw a figure clad in black in the home, wearing a mask and walking towards her after hearing crying noises. The figure, alleged to be Kohberger, walked past her and left the home. Analysis of surveillance footage showed that a white Hyundai Elantra, like the one that was seized when Kohberger was arrested, drove around the home several times between 3:29 a.m. and 4:04 a.m. before departing at a high rate of speed at 4:20 a.m., the affidavit said. The police chief said some of the 19,000 tips that police received were integral to arresting Kohberger, but declined to say when he became a suspect or what brought him to their attention. Law enforcement sources told CBS News that forensic analysis allegedly linked Kohberger to the crime scene in Idaho. And the affidavit states that DNA was found on a knife sheath left at the scene of the murders. I'm going to open this tab. I'm going to open another tab. We'll get into that in a little bit. So police, okay, I came up here, 30 minutes behind schedule. So we'll either go an extra 30 minutes or an extra hour. We'll see how we do, okay? So police also served a warrant on Kohberger's apartment in Washington State. While police still have not found a murder weapon, they did discover a reddish-brown stained pillowcase, a nitrate-type black glove, and hair strands. I need to write this stuff down. Where's my notebook? Or no, I'm just going to take a screenshot. So here's what they found: a sheath, a reddish-brown stained pillowcase, a nitrate-type black glove, and hair strands, okay? Investigators have been hoping to find dog hair because one victim owned a dog, which was at the scene of the crime. Those sources told CBS News that FBI agents have conducted surveillance operations on Kohberger in Pennsylvania, tracking his movements on the days before he was taken into custody. Okay, let's think about this for a little bit. Okay, so I suppose the prosecution, somehow they're going to have to do this, okay, because Kohberger is arrested in Pennsylvania. The allegations are that between 3:29 and 4:04, his Elantra vehicle was seen driving back and forth around the home where these decedents were found. Okay. They're going to have to show that it is, in fact, the same individual. I don't know. What is this? License plate readers all over the place. So I suppose there's some type of evidence that's going to show that he traveled from what is this, Idaho all the way to Pennsylvania. I'm interested in that part of this. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's see, what is Fry saying? Fry is the police chief. Okay. Anyways, let's move back to the top. So those sources told CBS News that FBI agents had conducted surveillance operations on Kohberger in Pennsylvania, tracking his movements on the days before he was taken into custody. Fry, the police chief, said that it was a fairly sleepless couple of days leading up to Kohberger's arrest. I have faith in those agencies across the nation. I have faith in our officers. I have faith in the FBI. They did a great job, Fry said. Fry said police have not found the murder weapon, but they have recovered. They they have recovered a Hyundai Elantra, not the Hyundai Elantra. Investigators said several weeks ago they were looking for the occupant or occupants of a 2011 through 2013 white Hyundai Elantra that was in the area when the students were killed. According to Kohberger's law, if I remember correctly, is there cell phone data? I don't think there's cell phone data. Is there cell phone data? I don't remember. I guess we'll eventually find out. According to Kohberger's lawyers, Kohberger and his father drove home together from Pullman, Washington to Pennsylvania in the Elantra. Okay. So again, time frame is going to be important here. If it's around 3, 4 a.m., typically, and I'm just thinking in terms of putting my prosecution hat on here, between 3 and 4 a.m., even if it's true that Kohberger drove drove from Washington to Pennsylvania with his father, right? I suppose that would have been later on in the day. And would the father actually be able to account for Kohberger's whereabouts between 3 and 4 a.m.? Probably not if you're sleeping, unless they were up playing spades or something along those lines, right? And here's the other thing as well. I guess I'll have to take a look at a calendar to try and figure out exactly what was actually. Let's not. I'm gonna open up another tab. Hopefully, I find the previous tab, but I want to find out Idaho. I want to see which day of the week that was. Idaho. I'm just gonna say murders. Let's see. So November 13, 2022. November 13, 22. Okay, that was a Sunday. Sunday. That's not close to Thanksgiving. That's at least 2 weeks out. Why would I? There's several reasons, but I'm trying to figure out why Kohberger and his father would be driving to Pennsylvania on a Sunday when ordinarily he'd be in college, unless there was like some type of family emergency or something along those lines. I have real questions. All right, so Benji said, oh, she wants to go to Switzerland or Hawaii. Oh, okay. It's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. Trying to get out. I mean, Hawaii is in America. Switzerland, that's definitely all the way on the other side of the world. Okay. Well, I hope you guys have a fantastic vacation. That's going to be great. Think of me when you're on vacation, all right? Okay, so let's see. I don't know. I have questions about. Anyways, let's move on. All right. So the lawyer said that Kohberger and the father drove from Washington to Pennsylvania in the Elantra. They took about 2.5 days. Black Jesus. They took 2.5 days. That's a lot of driving. I hate drive. I cannot even drive long. I've driven before. The longest I've ever driven, 11 hours. I once was on the road for 11 hours. Ordinarily, though, 30 minutes is the most I can do. I hate driving. All right. Well, 2.5 days. I don't know about that. And had been pre-planned. Apparently, the trip had been pre-planned from when Kohberger started classes at Washington State. Okay, the two arrived in Pennsylvania around December 17. The lawyer said that would then. Okay, so This is then misleading because this sentence following, or this paragraph following the prior, makes it seem as if, or at least maybe that's the narrative that the attorneys were trying to paint. It kind of reads as if Kohberger and the father hit the road the day after, or at least the day of the alleged murders. But this is saying December 17th, so it sounds like the father cannot actually vouch for his whereabouts. All right. So Fry declined to say if there was any possible connection between the victims and Kohbergers, and did not share a motive for the killings. I don't know that a motive was ever revealed. I don't even know that one would actually be revealed at trial. But what I've seen on Reddit, I know I'm always relying on Reddit. What I've seen on Reddit, people were people have been speculating. People have been speculating about Bryan Kohberger potentially having a romantic interest in one of the victims. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't even know if the people that are saying this know this to be true or not. But that is one of the rumors that I've seen floating around. So the probable cause affidavit does not provide any more information, but phone data records obtained through a search warrant show the suspect's phone in the coverage area. Okay. Okay, because that was a prior question that I had as well. Dang, if I don't know. Here's my question though. If we have to think about this from a defense perspective, if this guy is a potential criminologist. I mean, the study of criminology does not really tell you how to commit crimes. Not that they don't tell you how to, because listen, when the prosecution is going to talk about Bryan Kohberger in the context of being a PhD candidate, and that his focus was on criminology, the purpose of that is to really paint Bryan Kohberger as somebody that had some type of insider information on how to commit crimes, or in this case how to commit murder and get away with it. Okay, that's really what they're trying to paint here, and that's why even on LawTube, whatever this is called, a lot of people that cover this tend to highlight the fact that he was a criminologist in the making. Criminology does not teach you how to commit crimes and get away with it. Criminology is more so the study and understanding of crimes and the people that, unless they're trying to argue that Bryan Kohberger allegedly committed these crimes in order for him to understand or study himself. But the reason I bring this up is because if I don't want to say if it's true, from a defense perspective, right? And again, he was only in college for what, 2 weeks or something. I don't know what exactly they taught him besides introductions, besides introductions and knowing more about his fellow classmates. But I am interested in knowing, not even that I'm interested in knowing, there's an argument to be made that somebody that's allegedly as sophisticated as Bryan Kohberger would have known to leave his phone at home or elsewhere, if he is in fact going to go out to commit these crimes. And then there's another argument to be made. Was this unusual? So this is where defense have to take another look or closer look at his that could be a double-edged sword though, because what I was going to say is they need to take another look at his at his cell phone records and pretty much make an argument that it was not out of the ordinary for Bryan Kohberger to have been in this vicinity, right? If he had a legitimate, I don't want to use the word legitimate because I think people can be wherever the hell it is they want to be. But if he does in fact have a legitimate reason for being in this area, such as, I don't know, if it's close to a library he likes to go to, I don't know, his grandmother, he's from Pennsylvania though, but let's say, Alexa, stop. If, I don't know, the grandmother he has relatives or ancestors that are buried at a cemetery that's close by. A little morbid, but I don't know. It would be interesting to take a closer look at his phone records. But the problem with that is, if the phone records show more, I guess some jurors could actually argue that he was scouting out this place for an extended period of time. So I don't know, but I do have questions about that. All right, let us move on. But again, I do wonder if this if these crimes are allegedly committed by somebody that has some type of background as it relates to crimes, I do not know that you take your cell phone unless, Alexa, stop. Unless it's more of an impulse, I suppose, or it's not exactly premeditated, it's not exactly planned out. But again, if you're, I don't know, I have questions. Anyways, let's move on. So apparently the suspect's phone pinged within the location of this residence on at least 12 occasions before the murders took place. And then Fry goes on to say that these murders have shaken our community and no arrest will ever bring back these young students. However, we do believe justice will be found through the criminal process. All right. So when was this? Let's see. This is from Alexa, stop. Is there a date on this? Oh, June 27 or 24? No, that's when it was updated. There's no, I don't know exactly when that was published. All right, let me find the affidavit. I opened a bunch of tabs. Now I have to find it. Let us find. Come on, open. No, I don't know. I cannot view it on my phone, so I cannot view it on my phone. I wanted to take a closer look at the attorneys, though. Or maybe that's a separate video. I don't know. I wanted to take a closer look at the attorneys. Oh, Benji, I forgot to ask, where do you want to go on vacation? We know where your girlfriend wants to go. Where do you want to go? I think this is where we left off.
Now they believe they know who did it. They've charged him with the 4 murders in this case.
Okay.
Now, they also believe this is what the weapon is that I'm holding in my hand. This is the same exact weapon that's been described. And the reason they believe they know what it is that the sheath that is holding this knife, this K-bar knife, was found at the scene. And that is the crucial piece of evidence, the DNA that they say they found on the snap here. But as I hold this, I don't even want to unbutton this and look at the knife. I can feel how heavy it is. But just to know that someone used something just like this to take those 4 lives in such a brutal, brutal way with a weapon like this. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. And it's about the knife. Where's the murder weapon? They don't have the murder weapon. You know the defense is going to make that a big part of their case.
Okay.
Where could it be? Here to help answer this question, former homicide detective Chris McDonough. He's also the host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough, and retired FBI agent Stuart Fillmore. You can find him on all platforms as Texas Crime Travelers. Thank you both for being here. This is not an easy question, right? Chris, what are your thoughts about where this weapon could be?
Oh, where could it be? I want to know.
Well, Vinny, I think the first thing that we need to consider is, how important that weapon was to the offender. And that will help us determine whether or not the offender would have discarded it after the crime. And in this particular case, we have evidence, obviously, that he had gone back into Amazon and actually put a duplicate knife into, the cart, but he didn't make the purchase. So that may give us a little insight into what he was thinking post-homicide. So he could have tossed it out, kind of like, Bundy did back in the day, because we have evidence that he was cosplaying Bundy with photographs, obviously, on his phone. But it's probably alongside of a rotor in the Snake River.
Yeah, I've said
The Snake River.
I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting to look up the Gilgo Beach cases because I don't know that they have not put out any new information.
Man, this would absolutely put this over the top if you
Oh,
could
with the
recover this
exception
weapon.
of, I think
When we talk about that area of the country, Chris, it's very rural. Parts of it are. We've had Cody Thomas drive those roads. We're going to talk to him a little bit later in the program about that. But it just seems like there's a lot of places that it could disappear. But it also seems that everyone out there, if they came across a knife, would likely call police because this is such a high-profile case.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And because it is, so damning, that type of evidence, I think the citizens would 100% turn it in. And which leads us to this other thought process. Does he have this, hidden someplace? Did he take it back to Pennsylvania, or did he discard it? I agree with Stuart 1,000%. It's good if you had that piece of evidence, then it's a slam dunk at that point.
What's interesting, Chris? You just raised something I didn't even think of, Stuart. The fact that he's from Pennsylvania, drove across the country to go back home. That's ultimately where he got arrested. So the search for this murder weapon could not only be in the places he may have gone afterwards, but it could be anywhere from Pullman, Washington to Pennsylvania.
Absolutely, but I think maybe we might look a little closer. For whatever reason, he was prone to getting stopped by the cops. And if he planned this out and he's trying to be this, he's trying to maybe recreate some of Ted Bundy's successes or not successes, that's the wrong term, but he's basically trying to recreate being Ted Bundy. And he knows that he gets stopped all the time, especially at 4 o'clock in the morning. A car's going to stand
I don't know. Let's leave Ted Bundy alone. Let's
out in a small town like that. You have a greater chance of getting stopped. I think there's a good chance he wanted to get rid of that as quickly as possible, and that was probably part of his plan. We know that the phone was off. The phone goes on at 4:48. He left.
Okay, so it was off. 4:48. Okay.
He left the Kings Road house at 4:20. So there's 28 minutes unaccounted for. And when that first cell tower picks him up at 4:48, he's just south of the Blaine, Idaho tower. So that tells me he's probably on 95 somewhere. And the rest of the times that he hits the cell towers and the videos, it pretty much is consistent that he drove south on 95 and came back to Pullman on 195. So it's that 28 minutes after the 4:20 time when possibly he could have dumped the knife somewhere, maybe even buried it, and then you have to also consider the next day he drives all the way down to Clarkston, Washington, and on the way down there he goes by that same intersection of 95 and 195, which, by the way, there's an overpass there that looks over. I think it's called the Lewiston Overpass, and this guy had studied previous crimes. In the Manson killings, the killers threw their weapons over a cliff, on a roadside cliff. Maybe he studied how killers have gotten away and done their cases. Maybe he's trying to recreate a little bit of the Manson thing and threw it off that cliff in Lewiston.
I don't like the way that they keep linking this man to serial killers. So let's move on. Let us move on. I don't like that. I try to find the actual proceedings. I cannot find the actual. Is this? No, this won't be it. I just don't remember which day that was because I know Jason was up here. I should have written the date down. I just thought that it would be easy to find. Let's see. Law and crime trials. That might be it. Let's see, because I did not find it on Court TV. What's going on here? I could not really keep up with any of these trials. I tried to watch them a little bit though. I think this is it. Yep, this is where I should have gone. This is it. I messed up. I thought it was the other Law and Crime or Court TV. Okay.
All right, this is CR 0124316665.
Okay, so Benji says probably somewhere less expensive, but just as beautiful. Definitely near the ocean. IDK. I like the idea of eating all kinds of good seafood for a handful of days. All right. Okay, that's good. That's good.
State v. Kohberger, on behalf of the state, we have Mr. Thompson and Mr.
Judge, I need you
Horowitz.
to speak up.
And on behalf of, when you should note the defendant is present with counsel, Ms. Taylor, Ms. Massoff, and Ms. Barlow. This is the time
All right,
set.
yeah, we're definitely going to take a closer look at Kohberger's lawyers. I guess we can take a closer look at the prosecution as well, because I believe the attorney's name is Barlow. She is some type of DNA expert. I hate using the word expert, but we're going to go with that. She's some type of DNA expert, and she used to work, I think, I want to say Berkeley. I don't quite remember. I'll have to go back in there. She worked for some university in genetics. She later opened up her own law practice where she pretty much focuses on being, I suppose, a genetics consultant or working on cases that deal with DNA, which is actually really brilliant, right? That's a niche practice. So that's what I think. This is her over here. We need to, oh, that's actually Bryan. Then I think this is the other attorney. One of these attorneys successfully got a death penalty case overturned. I just don't remember which one, because so this is like going back to 2023 or something.
For
We'll do that on
at least
Monday.
the
Though.
public portion of today's
So,
hearing,
Tuesday
set forth a
or
motion to
Thursday,
continue
one
the
of the two.
trial filed by the defense. So we'll start with that.
What are the comments saying?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Your Honor, our motion to continue has been filed and is necessary to protect Bryan Kohberger's rights under the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of Idaho. Specifically, a continuance is necessary to protect his due process rights, his rights to a fair trial, his rights to effective
Oh
assistance.
yeah, we don't even have to go far in the comments. The people, and that's what I said. The people are against Bryan Kohberger. We've seen oftentimes, people saying somebody is guilty, this, that. But with Bryan Kohberger, I don't know. With Bryan Kohberger, I just do not know. I don't know. I don't know if you can, in fact, get a fair trial, because with a case of this nature, you're probably going down. Whether you've done it or not, you're going down. You're getting convicted.
Of counsel, rights to confrontation, Mr. Kohberger's right to present a full defense, and if it should come to it, a fair sentencing hearing and be free of cruel and unusual punishment. The record of this case spans 2.5 years, and it shows that this request does not come as a surprise. Looking through the history of this case shows that the defense has met challenges and difficulties along the way, but has been dedicated in meeting all of the deadlines.
Okay.
We have talked about discovery issues in this courtroom before, and that in large part brings us to need a continuance. 68 terabytes of information is a huge amount of information. There have been 23 requests for additional discovery over the span of 2.5 years and 7 motions to compel. When I say that this doesn't come as a surprise, that this comes from the record, I would direct the court to look back to May of 2023 and June of 2023, and our second motion to compel. Included in that was what was known as Exhibit A from the defense, and that depicted how we were receiving discovery. So this is not a new issue. This is something that's been coming up for a long time. We were receiving discovery, but it was such that you would get a file that would say hundreds of photographs, hundreds of pages of reports, each having to be looked at individually to know what was there and then organized. This case has also faced unique issues, starting with the media coverage of this high-profile case, non-dissemination orders that were addressed in courts, and then the grand jury materials that we had to fight to get access to before we could properly challenge the grand jury.
So Callie also said she does not know how they'll find an impartial jury. Good night, my friend. I'll reply to your WhatsApps, and don't forget, when you wake up, please send me the case that you were talking about. Okay. Have a good night, my dear. Love you.
Faced issues with discovery, particularly with the IGG materials. We spent a great deal of time trying to get access to those materials. Those were ultimately what we could get, was ultimately presented in a motion to suppress, and that's preserved should there be a conviction in this case. We faced venue issues in this case, culminating in the change of venue and bringing us to Ada County. At the first hearing in this courtroom, we discussed the discovery issues and not having read everything and being ready with a full investigation in this case. That was apparent through our motions to strike the death penalty, our motions to compel expert disclosures filed in September and December of 2024, and requests for more time to file our motions in limine that was granted in January of 2025. Throughout the course of the motions in limine and then a motion to strike death based on discovery issues in February and March of this year, the record is replete with notice that we are not prepared to go to trial in this case. The discovery is vast and we have not had a chance to review it all. That we met deadlines for experts shows our dedication to comply with court orders. It does not depict effective counsel ready to go to trial on this case. We would submit that it's the court's responsibility to assess this motion to continue with heightened due process that's required in death penalty cases. The death penalty case is different. That comes from Ford versus Wainwright at 477 U.S. 399 at 411. The court must be sensitive to safeguard every avenue of due process. The Idaho Supreme Court said the qualitative difference between death and other penalties calls for a greater degree of reliability when death is imposed. And that comes from State versus Creech, 105 Idaho, 362 at 383. Looking at all of the constitutional rights Mr. Kohberger has, effective assistance of counsel really becomes the crux of how all of these other rights are covered for Mr. Kohberger. And effective assistance of counsel applies both to the merits phase and the penalty phase of a death penalty case. The courts are guided and counsel's guided by the American Bar Association guidelines on capital cases. Wiggins versus Smith, 539 U.S. 510 at 524 said the ABA guidelines are guides to determine what is reasonable. And that's talking about reasonable performance by defense counsel in a capital case. The Ninth Circuit in Andrews versus Davis at 944 F3D,
Get into the meat and
1092
potatoes,
at
please.
1109 said
Are you guys
relies
gonna
on the
fight?
ABA guidelines as the proper measure
Okay.
to
Prosecution.
test
Get up
an
in the
attorney's
bed.
investigation. In Idaho, our public defender statutes reference the ABA guidelines as applying to indigent defense.
What's happening here?
These apply to the full investigation of the merits phase and require us to raise all legal claims. They require us to perform a background on all witnesses that might be called, especially those being called by the state. That means that we have to review all discovery to be able to present a full defense for Mr. Kohberger.
Okay.
We cannot present what we are not aware of. I would note for the court that discovery has been ongoing. I received discovery just this week. It is discovery that I have not reviewed yet. Considering what's required at a penalty phase in a capital case, we're required to perform in a way that the jury can carry out their function of individualized sentencing. That means that Mr. Kohberger's background has to be known and investigated and ready to present to the jurors. Evidence of his character has to be known and ready to present to the jurors, and his circumstances have to be known and ready to present to the jurors. That's addressed
No,
in the
no,
Woodson
the judge,
case
a judge is not sold.
and in the Lockett case. The jury must have the opportunity to consider all evidence that may weigh against the death penalty, and that means anything from his life history. It is the duty of the defense to find and investigate all mitigating information. We do have several experts that would be ready for the mitigation portion of the case, should the case reach that phase. And they rely on understanding family history and Mr. Kohberger's own history. They can only understand what they've been presented. And the investigation to fully evaluate needs to be thorough. That means that records have to be collected. That means that interviews, collateral interviews have to be done, and those have not all been completed. It's not because of a lack of diligence in this case. Further, when things that are noted as red flags arise, those things must be investigated. Red flags aren't fanciful ideas of what else could we do in this case. They're real things that come up in the course of the investigation, and whether or not they're important to mitigation and presentation for a jury's consideration requires time to investigate and collect records. Documentation is very important. The court's aware that red flags have come up and they require further investigation. Those are issues that may mean a lot to the experts that would be ready to testify, but they can't be presented until there's a full investigation. They are things that might change the course of the evaluation or might require us to have an additional expert to help explain certain circumstances. And that's important for the individualized sentencing.
All right, when is
that's
the
required by the
prosecution going to
Constitution.
respond?
Your Honor,
Not to rush you.
there have been numerous challenges with gathering records and interviewing collateral witnesses. I know the court is aware of some of those particular issues. I'm not going to highlight them now, but it's imperative that we be able to collect records and conduct interviews from other family members besides just Mr. Kohberger and his parents. And it's also imperative that his history be complete with educational records, medical records, and those things are still being done to this day. The other reason that a continuance is appropriate in this case is based on the media coverage, the dateline issue that has been talked about in this court.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's ongoing pre-trial coverage. So that's pretty, I don't know. I do not know that they can get an impartial jury.
Room before
I don't see it.
and what's yet to come. The Dateline episode wasn't just a one-time deal back in May. That continues to be talked about. Everything that happens in this case continues to be talked about, and this court has a duty, a responsibility to make sure that Mr. Kohberger receives a fair trial. That comes from Shepard versus Maxwell, 384 U.S. 333. And a continuance may be the way that the court can best protect Mr. Kohberger. That comes from Patton versus Yount, 467 U.S. 1025. In addition to what is going on with what happened with the Dateline episode, that's not all. There's a book set to be released just a few weeks from now to be followed by a docuseries on Amazon Prime. There's a claim that there's inside sources that provide information in this case. At the very least, the moment we start attempting to select a jury in this case, those things are going to be on everybody's TV, everybody's social media feed, and some of the very witnesses that will be expected to testify will be taking part in the docuseries at least, and maybe noted in the book. That is in and of itself an exceptional reason for us to have a continuance to let those things play out for a while. I would also note, Your Honor, that jury selection is going to be jury selection is going to be particularly challenged and will need a great deal of time based on what's happened in the media
Alexa,
and
stop.
continues to happen. Your Honor, our request is for a continuance in this matter to allow us to be effective, perform our constitutional duty for Mr. Kohberger, to protect his constitutional rights, to make sure that we have fully investigated all mitigating circumstances so the jury, if it comes to it, can perform their individualized sentencing judgment and function, and to allow some space between what's recently happened in the media. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Your Honor. Of course. Thank you, Your Honor. I will, I think, address Taylor's arguments sort of in the reverse order in which she raised the issues that she raised. I want to begin, though, by bringing us and the court
He looks young.
back to what the standard is for this motion to continue as opposed to what might happen after a conviction with respect to ineffective.
Yeah, that's what I caught on as well in terms of the defense. I mean, it is valid. It is a valid concern to be concerned about the sentencing phase, but you kind of first have to get through the trial. But the reality is that, listen, these are death penalty defenders. That's what they deal with day in and day out. So I suppose they're used to working in an environment where every client you represent gets convicted up until you secure or get a get a conviction overturned on appeal. Okay, so I suppose they're just being realistic because they foresee that their client is going to get convicted.
So, counsel, right now the standard is whether denying a continuance would violate the defendant's rights by
How long are you going to talk for?
causing unfair prejudice. And that is an objective standard that the court has, and the court has discretion
And she comes back.
on all motions to continue.
I'll just skip because
I
I
would
have.
start with noting that
limited
if the new discovery is the state's contact of witnesses we've listed, the state knows that there are mitigation witnesses that we've listed because we had to disclose them, but they are people that have refused to speak with us. That presents a challenge in the case. A lot of the witnesses that refuse to speak with us have to do with records, medical records of Bryan Kohberger, past
Why are they
treatment records
refusing?
of Bryan Kohberger.
I mean,
Those are
I
important.
suppose it makes sense because even the university came out with a statement supporting the family. So I suppose you're probably not. It's a difficult position to be in.
Things that the gravity of what they have to say can't be known to our experts until we have the opportunity to fully understand those things. And we continue to work on access to witnesses and access to additional information. Your Honor, I want to touch on just a couple of points. One, when the court considers a continuance and considers whether Bryan Kohberger's rights are violated, his right to a fair trial, his right to confront witnesses and evidence against him, his right to present a full defense, and his right to effective assistance of counsel are implicated and laid out in our motion to continue. The ABA guidelines require us to do a full investigation. It's not going scorched earth to understand Bryan Kohberger's full life history. These are things that are required. And we've done everything that we can. We have had a mitigation expert on the case. This is 2.5 years into a case, and the average for capital cases is 3.5 years.
In federal court.
In federal court.
Which moves at a snail's pace in its best day in regular cases.
Well, the
I'm
court.
not a practitioner in federal court, so I don't have any basis to talk to the court about that. But what I can tell you is that a capital case where we have a client and we need to investigate both the merits phase and a penalty phase at the same time takes time.
All right, folks. It's 10:30. I need to call it a night. I need to iron. I still have to feed myself. I need to eat. So let us reconvene on on Tuesday, regular time, 8:30. If I need to reschedule, I'm not reschedule, but if I have to push the time back, then I'm going to do that. Thank you guys for tuning in. I am calling it a night. Have a fantastic weekend.